Nice.
All right. Are we good?
Are we on?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Palomarin Facebook Live. We're here at the Palomarin Field Station with Point Blue. My name is Hope. I am from Illinois.
I am Naomi. I am from Oregon.
And we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah.
Because as you can see, we have a very cool bird that Naomi's going to talk about.
Yeah. So we have a sharp-shinned hawk. This is a hatchery, meaning it was hatched only a few months ago. And this is a young male. They're smaller than the females. And we don't catch many of them during July, at least. So this is very exciting. I think this is the 19th, at least less than 20 captures in July all time for our project, which is really exciting.
Yeah. You can see we've already banded it.
Yeah.
We got it right before starting the live, so this is very exciting, and we still have to weigh it.
Yeah, so we still have to weigh it, and then, yeah.
We'll get that started. So when we weigh birds, we put them in these cups, and we're gonna go head first. And try to keep feet out best we can to avoid talons and getting footed. All right, I got 94.4.
94.4.
Come back. We've already taken most of the data on this bird beforehand because we don't like to hold on to our birds for too long because we very much prioritize bird safety. But is there anything else you want to talk about with this bird before we release?
No, I think we can talk about some stuff after.
Okay,
after
sounds
this,
good.
yeah.
All right, we're going to watch a release for these guys. Alrighty, ready, buddy? Okay. So when we release raptors, it's different from other perching birds or passerines that we're used to. Instead of letting them with perching or the passerines, we will let them sit on our hand and let them fly off. But with raptors, we don't want them to fly back at us. We kind of give them a nice throw of a start to kind of get them going in the direction that's not towards us.
Yeah.
Which is very fun. But we do have some more birds to show, so we can kind of start jumping into that.
We can do more intro.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get to those in just a second. Yeah.
Otherwise, so we're located now in Point Reyes National Park. We have been here since 1966.
Yeah. And
And the huge topic for today is fledglings.
yes.
So we did very quick introductions, but we are both apprentices here at Palo. So we've been here since February, just kind of learning about how to run a banding station and really get used to the process of banding and extracting birds from, we have mist nets, if you want to talk.
Yeah. So mist nets, they're basically they're a fine mesh that's actually quite hard for the birds to see. And they, so it's set up, and there's we have some like other stronger lines running through it that make the nets fold and form pockets that the birds fall into when they hit them, and it doesn't hurt the birds. Then they just get a little tangled until we come along and take them out of the net. It's a big part of our training of how to do that safely.
For the most part, we mainly catch smaller birds. Sometimes we get a really fun day where we catch something larger, like a sharp shin, or sometimes we also get larger things like band-tailed pigeons. But for the most part, we get pretty smaller birds, as well as like woodpeckers and hummingbirds, which they get caught in the net much easier because the size of the netting is like the perfect size of their head, so it goes in. So it gets caught very easy, and it just like kind of stays there, versus other larger birds will bounce out.
Yeah. And if we were targeting larger birds, we would use a larger mesh size.
Mm-hmm. Another cool thing, so we're currently running our nets all day, usually for 6 hours. So we started today at 6:25. And have been running nets every 30 minutes. So we have someone currently checking nets because we don't like to keep them, we don't like to keep birds waiting for too long, as another to reiterate that bird safety aspect.
All right, so topic of today's live is fledglings. Fledglings are young birds that are mostly independent-ish. Like they're still being like occasionally fed by the parents, but they're out of the nest and getting stronger, developing the ability to fly, finishing growing out their feathers. And so we have two types of fledglings. They're called altricial, which are your typical songbird chicks. When they're like in the nest, when they come out of the egg, they're pink, covered in a little bit of fuzz, eyes are closed. They're completely dependent on their parents to bring them food. And then there's precocial, which are things like waterfowl, shorebirds, like quail, other things like that, where the birds are up and running around and feeding themselves within a few hours of hatching.
So fledgling can, the definition of fledgling can change a lot between the two, while for those passerines and songbirds, once they kind of leave the nest, that's what we kind of consider fledgling, versus shorebirds, it's usually, they leave the nest so quickly, so it's once they kind of develop those flight skills that we count them as fledged, which is usually a couple weeks in.
Yeah.
But so it's been really cool. Wintering birds with no breeding condition to the breeding season, where birds are developing what we call brood patches and cloacal protuberances. Brood patches are important because they facilitate incubation to the eggs, and we see those on females, but also some males in certain species. So it's not as clear to when we're kind of sexing birds as you might think. And then cloacal protuberances are mainly seen on males, but also can vary with species, and are mainly used to kind of store sperm. So that's been really fun to kind of watch that process, and then we're now getting into fledgling season. So the majority of what we've been catching lately are fledglings like that sharp shin. So we're just going to kind of give out a question to the audience, I guess, to just see, have you guys been seeing young birds, and if so, what species? If you guys want to like leave comments, and we can kind of come back and revisit, see what you guys have seen. So with fledglings, what we're kind of looking at in order to determine that age is a few key features. So it depends on species, but the main ones are kind of looking at skull. So for the sculling, we look at the skull for a few reasons. In the first year of a bird's life, it only has one layer of skull, and it is developing a second layer through that first year. Connecting those two layers are columns of bone, which we call skull ossification, that process. And it takes a good amount of months for that to happen. And that is one way we can determine whether it is a hatch year, it hatched within this year, and is a fledgling. So adults will have a fully ossified skull. So those columns will completely encompass their skull. So potentially we will see that with one of our birds coming up, and we can talk about that more, but we'll put water to kind of part the feathers, and in order to see those columns. Another thing we'll look at is gape.
I'm just going to jump in. You can repeat what I'm saying, but we've got Bewick's wren babies and green heron and white-tailed kites being...
Whoa, we already have a few comments. So green herons, white-tailed kites, did you say? Mm-hmm. That's super cool.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. I'm very jealous about that one.
Bewick's wren, which maybe we could...
And a Bewick's wren. So we can...
Speaking of Bewick's wrens.
Yeah, speaking of.
We have one. Do you want to do this one? And then do the other one?
Sure. So, and we already processed this one.
Yes.
So, since we did get some of these birds earlier, we did already go through the processing of them. So just taking data. When we say processing, we mean taking data, aging, and sexing. And we'll get into that process more with our next bird. But for now, since we had a Bewick's wren, here is a very sweet Bewick's fledgling. So, something cool about this guy. So we already did skull this bird, and it had a skull of 1, correct? So very slight ossification, or those columns were only very at the base of the skull. But you can see a very slight gape on this bird, which is just fleshy mouth parts right at the very end. And this one's angry, understandably. But it does already have a band. And we should probably release, now that we've kind of talked about it, just to get them on their way. We don't like to hold on, as I stated before, hold on to them for too long.
Yeah. This bird is probably like a couple weeks out of the nest.
And you'll see us do a couple holds. This is called bander's grip. And what I was doing before when I was showing it to you guys was the photographer's grip, which gets a nicer view of the bird. So I'm going to just quickly release this bird.
Are we good?
I think so. You say hold on for some, make sure everything's going all right.
We're having some technical difficulties here. We just hold on for one moment.
Bear with us.
I'm not sure. That seems like a 5. Okay, I think
we're still okay?
We're good? All right.
Okay. Other things we will look at before we get to this final bird, I'll get through it pretty quick, is plumage differences. So a lot of fledglings will have a different plumage than the adults. Again, not always the case. You'll find a lot of exceptions when it comes to nature. We'll also look at eye color. That's true with like wren tits or spotted towhees, also woodpeckers. The fledglings will have a different kind of iris coloring, often lighter. And then we'll also look at sometimes they'll have kind of looser body feathers. Those feathers coming in are not, they grew quicker, so they're much looser, not as kind of clean, I guess, or stiff as the adults who had more time to grow in their feathering. Lastly, I think I just have tail often is still growing in, so we can actually see that process of the tail. We'll see kind of like that feather shaft. We'll still see it, which often you do not. And then also just really fresh feathering. Sometimes we see a halo, which is kind of on the edge of a bird's wing, and it just indicates a really brand new feather, and it's just light edging. And then lastly, with hummingbirds, we'll see bill grooving, which is really cool. So adults will have a really smooth bill versus fledglings will have grooves kind of, or ridges within that bill that eventually go away pretty quickly. But yeah,
let's get into
we'll move on.
There's 2 other ones from 2 former banders, Brandon and Jennifer, separately. Eastern whippoorwill and hooded oriole.
Eastern whippoorwill and hooded oriole. You guys have been seeing a lot of cool fledglings.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this bird.
So I will describe.
Yeah.
So we have a mystery bird, and potentially you can show it to the camera, see if people want to guess what it is. This is always the fun part, because we get a bag, and sometimes you don't know what's in it if you weren't the one to extract it from the net.
All right, here we go. This is
Look at that tail.
a mystery bird.
If people want to put into the comments what you think it is, we are going to move forward, but if seems like you guys are commenting quickly, which is fine.
Do I get a color?
It's a new bird.
Yes.
It does not have a band. So we're going to get started. We know what the species is, and we know that it takes a 1B. I'm going to give it a little bit of time before spoiling it.
Yeah.
So we have different band sizes depending on the species. And those are determined by U.S. Geological Survey through years of data and what fits species best. Because our key is to make sure we get a band on the bird that is not too tight and not too loose. We want that band to move but not go over the bird's foot. So another cool thing about this species, it's a study species, so we're going to be color banding it today. So that's a fun process. If you want to put this one on, we'll just do the first one, RKK \S. So that's going to be on the right, so you can keep it there. and then I'll get the rest ready. So
we do band number first.
Yeah. Ready.
2941.
Yep.
92151.
In sequence.
Great.
So we always get the number, our band number, which we like to think of almost like the social security number of these birds. They're all unique numbers just for that individual. So if we recapture it, we can get all of this data on where it was first banded, every other time it's been banded, age, sex, everything we'll be taking shortly. Do you want to put color bands on right away?
Yeah.
Okay. So for color banding is really cool because instead of the aluminum bands that we use on all birds, we'll use plastic ones, which, as their name indicates, are colorful. And we're giving this one a band combination of red, black, black.
We got 2 votes for song sparrow.
Oh, you guys are right. It is a song sparrow.
Right on.
Good job. You guys know your birds. Okay, so I'm going to go. So red is going to be closest to the body.
All right.
And I'm just going to give these to you as we go. And then
I'm
they're going to both be on the
last.
left. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sound good. And then black. So for color bands, we'll put them, so this color band is red, black, black, with red being closest to the body and those black bands being farther down because we kind of read them like a book, left to right, up then down. So you can kind of see as Naomi slips it onto the bird's leg, we have these little tools that open the band up and then can be slid on and then closed very quickly. And then I'll write down this band combo.
Then we kind of pinch them closed and so they actually stay shut around the bird's leg because plastics are a little bit flexible and don't stay shut great all the time. So we have to just ensure that like it sits nicely on the leg.
And unlike the other aluminum bands, the cool thing about color bands is we do not have to recapture the species to, if we see the bird, we know by those color bands that is that individual. So it makes it kind of nice if it is a study species, you don't have to recapture and you're putting less stress on that bird. So a lot of studies do use color banding as a huge conservation technique to monitor populations.
Right.
And then so we're going to go through the rest of the data. So first we're going to go through aging and sexing.
So I'm going to skull the bird. So a lot of times you just take a little bit of water and put it on the back of the bird's head. It allows us to see through the skin a little better and to see the tops of the columns where the skull has ossified.
So you can see as Naomi is parting, and she's just looking through that skin to see those columns. So the columns kind of look like just little white dots through the skin. It can be very hard to see, but that is why we've been trained in order to
Yes, this
determine
has just a few,
age.
It's just starting its ossification process, and so it is a skull of 1.
Skull of 1, awesome. So it is indeed a hatch year. We can base it off of that, but we can also look at that juvenile plumage. And does it have a gape?
Yes, it does.
Woo! So
Maybe a little more than this. And just a little bit of yellow right at the base of the bill here.
Focusing.
All right.
and since it is a juvenile, they will not have any breeding condition, and we cannot sex them at this time. There are certain species which, for juveniles, we can still sex them. A big one is hummingbirds, and we look at the tail pattern for that, the tail coloration. But for most species, we will just say unknown sex at this time and hope to recapture them later, and maybe they'll have some breeding condition.
Yeah.
So
I checked fat there. We blow up, and it's in what we call the furcular hollow between, like, right up, kind of like would be between our clavicles, between the collarbones.
and
This bird doesn't have any.
And fat just looks kind of like a orangey, yellowish substance above or right under the skin, and it can often get pretty high up in certain birds. But for the most part, we tend not to see too much fat. And then now Naomi is blowing on the bird, and by doing this, she is looking for pin feathers and looking for molt. So she's looking at body and flight feather molt, basically to see if anything is coming in, any new feathers, and then that is just part of our data process. So we'll write down whether or not she sees any of that. So she's checking the tail, the wings, as well as just the entire body.
All right, body molt is so there's quite a bit of body molt, so it's growing in a lot of body feathers.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to call it a 2.
Okay.
We score this out of 3, so 2 out of 3 is pretty high.
Yes.
For one of these birds.
So 1 would be like less than a third, and of the body is made up of like kind of pin feathers, and then above that, so 2 means like a third to 2/3 are pin feathers coming in, which is very cool. That's a lot.
Yeah, and then it has does have flight feather molt.
Nice.
It is missing its central tail feathers.
Or is that symmetrical?
It's symmetrical, but also.
But potentially
I think it's part of the normal. It's not part of the normal pattern of molt.
Okay.
So we're going to call it adventitious, which means it's just for some reason has lost some feathers, and it will be growing them back here shortly.
And then what feathers are those?
It is Retrices 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
And
symmetrical. They're just missing.
Okay. Missing. Okay. So we write down all of this data in our notes as well. So we try to document basically the entire condition of the bird as we go along. So next we're going to be looking at wear and fade on the feathers. So you can see Naomi is kind of like nicely preening those feathers in order to get the best viewing of them. Wear being looking at any nicks that might be on the edges, and then fade looking at kind of like where the sun hits, and you kind of see a lightened feather where that UV damage is.
So it has a couple of just really tiny nicks on the end of the feathers, so we're going to call it a wear of 2.
Okay. Often with hatch ears, we don't get any fade because their feathers are so new. I'm guessing there's no fade on this bird.
There's no fade.
Because their feathers are so new, they haven't been out out and about even in the world for so long that there can be fade. So we're going to put a 0 for that. And then we're going to be taking the wing. So we call it the wing cord, the entire length of the wing, using this nice
59 millimeters.
Awesome, 59.
And it's basically just another way to tell us like how big the bird is. It's basically like measuring height for us. And then we'll take another measurement, which is the tarsus.
And Naomi just used our wing rulers for this, so it just has a nice little kind of hook here where we put what we think of kind of like the elbow, I guess, of the wing, or the shoulder of the wing.
21.9 millimeters.
21.9.
And then
tarsus just being kind of the leg measurement as well. It's just one bone within the leg that we're measuring. And then again, with this weighing process, we put the head of the bird in the cup. It's a much smaller cup, you might notice. I'll take the bag because it's
weight is 18.8 grams.
18.8. Awesome. And then we have all of our data. And what net was this one from? 2 as well? Okay. So we also number all of our nets.
So we need to take this bird back.
Oh, because of the adventitious.
Yeah. Oh, the color bands.
Right.
So we return all color banded birds back to where we caught them.
Bag?
Yes.
And then we'll give that to
So we don't
Diana.
throw off our data when we're doing like resighting data. Because if we move them, they might just stay where we release them and not go back to their territory where they were originally captured.
Awesome. For now, I can just keep them on the line.
So it's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Less than that.
We'll just hang this bird here for right now and take it back in just a minute.
One thing that Leishka wanted is to just mention how to find out more about the apprenticeship.
Yeah, totally. So To learn more about our apprenticeship here, which is what Naomi and I are doing currently, are in the middle of, is to go to pointblue.org and go to our careers page. So that would be that's where they're all posted, and you can get a better sense of what it entails, I suppose. And then also, if you want to continue to support Point Blue, on that same within pointblue.org, you can also donate. We greatly appreciate any donations, and we hope that you guys really enjoyed. You got some really cool birds. Yeah,
and donations help fund like this project. Helps fund us, so helps fund us so we can actually have the opportunity to learn these things, and so we can take our skills elsewhere and just kind of magnify the impact of what we're doing here.
There's also, if you want to request an appointment to visit.
Yes. So we're currently due to COVID, we are closed to drop-ins. However, you can request appointments to come visit us and see banding in person, which is really fun. And you can also do that through our website. And we are accepting also groups, school groups, and then small appointment only. Visits. Other than that, I think that's everything. If people have any questions, we'll try to get to them in the chat afterwards. But we hope you really enjoyed and got to learn a little bit more about Palomarin and the fledglings we've been catching so far. And thanks for joining.